mean, I love Vancouver. More specifically, I love East Vancouver, and even more specifically than that, I love this neighborhood. But I've never really thought of Vancouver as a particularly well-designed city, nor have I ever thought of it as a particularly beautiful city, in fact, And I think that small city and that sprawling, vomiting suburbs and all those single-family homes, those big wide streets full of cars and place closing down after midnight. Really, that's a great city. And well, shit. So I started thinking about that. Well, what does constitute a great city? And so I started trying to figure that out. And it took me about 3 years, and I've gotten no closer to that answer. But I think that I started to clarify what the kind of questions I wanted to ask myself. And I started out writing with 3 kind of core contentions that kind of carried me through the book. And the first one is that urbanization, it's a good thing. And in fact, even more than that it's our only real hope for an ecological future. So that's to say that there's a long history in a long Western tradition anyways, of reviling cities, of thinking of them as places of degradation and vice and dirt, and that anybody could get the hell out of the city would do it as soon as possible. But I think much more accurately is to say that if we're going to have 7 billion people, let alone 8 or 9 or 10 billion people living on this planet, and not completely destroying it, the only way to think of that future as sustainable or ecological is for us to live compactly, for us to live densely, for us to live in cities, and to learn how to share land, how to share resources, how to share transportation, how to share our land bases. We got to be able to figure out how to share space, how to live compactly, and to not fuck the world up any worse than it already is. So I think that kind of counterintuitively, our only hope for an ecological future, the second one is that cities have to be made common. And that is to say that right now, cities are built primarily by and for greed. But we can think of them in another way. Cities have to be made not just common, but I would say solid. That is to say, in a world of globalization where there's people and money and capital investment shooting around the world and sloshing around the world, we have to be able to figure out a way to turn cities into places that aren't just public space where people move through randomly on their way to new purchases, but a place where people can really inhabit, where people can actually contribute, can actually inhabit, can actually live in, and actually turn places from public space into common space, understood. And the third contention that I've been kind of running with is that project to make it a great city, of making an ecological city, of making a common city, we just can't leave that up to experts. We can't leave that up to bureaucrats, we can't leave that up to developers, we can't leave that up to planners, that we can't leave, most importantly maybe, that up to master planners. That the project of building a great city has to be left up to everyday people. They have to be left up to a million decisions that are made on the ground by everyday people. It's what Christopher Alexander would call a living city, or a city that has to unfold accretively. It's a city that you can't plan for, a city that has to be surprising and serendipitous, because that's what makes the city alive and vital and energetic and, well, a place of freedom. Notice that when I was in another city, I had, maybe my clearest thoughts about Vancouver. So this book, Common Ground in a Liquid City, is 10 essays, each of them written from a different place. Looking back on a specific aspect of Vancouver that kind of came to mind and kind of following that thread, and then reflecting on Vancouver in particular, and then trying to say something about urbanism, but more importantly about cities in general, and to try to get back to my core question of what might a great city look like. But actually the book took me about 3 years to write. And the thing that really kind of made sense, and I think kind of pulled the book together and began to help my ideas, was that I spent most of that 3 years interviewing people. And so I talked to somewhere, I'm going to say about 80 or 90 places with people.